How would you feel if you paid $500 for something and didn't even fully own it? Unfortunately, with the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, that's exactly what's happened. If you are doing something with their console, like modding it or sharing games in a way that they don't like, they can cancel your hardware in your Nintendo Switch 2 and then you can no longer use it. And it just really sucks because most of us grew up playing Nintendo games like Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros., Mario Party, and then Zelda, Pokemon, a lot of classic games that many of us remember very fondly and nostalgically. I, for one, played all of those games and remember them very fondly. And I've spent most of my life playing many, many games. And it's just sad to see how Nintendo no longer really creates that many of those good games anymore, and just how far their quality and content has dropped while their prices have gone up. And then they've become more a greedy company than anything. So since Nintendo has become one of the most anti-consumer gaming companies in the world right now, I believe that we should boycott them and stop buying their products until they become more for the people again. So for my first point, according to Game Developer, Nintendo raised prices of their Switch hardware, blaming market conditions, which they've already have extremely expensive consoles and stuff, and most of their hardware really hasn't improved. Like the Nintendo Switch 2 did not improve in many ways of the Nintendo Switch 1, and some of the hardware they made more expensive is some of their old consoles, like the Nintendo Switch 1 and some of their older consoles. They raised the prices of those this year, which they blame market conditions for. But usually, like other game companies like Xbox and PlayStation, as the years go on, their older consoles become cheaper as their hardware is outdated. But not Nintendo, they keep raising the prices. Nintendo also released Scarlet and Violet, one of the first $70 games released by a major gaming company. And you'd think $70, that must be a pretty good, well-made game, especially from a well-known franchise and a multi-billion-dollar company. But Digital Foundry called Pokemon Scarlet and Violet a technical failure with poor visuals, low resolution, and a frame rate that often dropped below 30 frames per second, which, for those who don't know, 60 is where you want to be at for most games. That's usually the baseline. And so for a $70 game released by a multi-billion-dollar company to be dropping below 30 with low visuals already and not just a great-looking game, that's just very bad, and just goes to show that they really dropped in quality of that game, and yet it was still $70, raising their price for no reason. While other game companies, like a game released recently for Expedition 33, was just a game created by a small group of developers of like 30 people that's up and nominated for Game of the Year, and the visuals are outstanding and just way better than Nintendo, which is, a multi-billion-dollar company. Just because, they had passion, and it goes to show that you can create these games like that, but Nintendo is just not willing to do it right now. And then, for another problem that Nintendo has caused is they sue everyone that is competition, or that they don't like the way they're playing their games. So for example, Palworld released, and it was a similar game to Pokemon, whereas you could go around capturing creatures and then like riding them and stuff and using them to fight and things like that. Of course, there was a whole lot more to the game, like building and all that, so it really wasn't Pokemon. There was just similar aspects, and Nintendo sued them. Palworld was, for a little bit, the most popular and most bought game for like a month. And again, a game created by very small developers just with some ideas about a game they wanted to create. And then they got sued by Nintendo. And according to TechDirt, an article reported in Japan that their patent got rejected. One of Nintendo's main patents against Palworld was rejected for lacking of originality, and it was based off the fact that they tried to sue Palworld for the idea that you can summon a creature next to you and then ride it. So they tried to sue them for the fact that you can do that in the game Palworld. Just going to show that they really didn't have anything, and you cannot sue a company for having that idea or mechanic in a game. They were just trying to make them go bankrupt so they would stop producing a competing game. And eventually Microsoft stepped in and made it so that didn't happen. But it just goes to show that they're just shooting down the competition instead of actually raising their quality and effort and passion again. And they also have sued their own fans for modding their old games and trying to re-release them for free. Just old games that they don't even sell anymore, so it wouldn't affect their sales at all, but just because they weren't playing it the way they intended, they sued them. And so, in conclusion, basically, Nintendo is just not a game for the people anymore. It's no longer that passion-made gaming company that created all these classics that we all fell in love with. They're just more greedy and for themselves now. So we should boycott them until they become more for the people again.